Yeah.
Cool.
Hey, there we go.
This is Circa Ignem podcast, episode number 019, with our very special guest, Mr. John Gerardi.
Good
John,
to be on.
welcome to
Thanks,
the show.
guys.
Awesome.
19 of these. All right. We're rocking and rolling.
We're not at the 500 or so that you're at.
Yeah. Well, you boys do this 5 days a week. Then you'll start growing your radio muscles.
John initially told us he wouldn't come on until there were 3 digits, but he changed his mind.
Yeah. I gotta help out. I gotta help you boys out.
That's why we added the 0, right?
Yeah.
I guess there are 3 digits.
So it's an aspirational thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you make sure you say 019, please?
Yeah.
Manny, good evening. Rick, good evening.
Hello.
There you go, guys.
All right. So,
All right.
John Gerardi is the executive director of Right to Life of Central California.
There you go.
He was also the founding CEO and currently the director of development for the Obria Medical Clinics of Central California.
There you go.
He is the host of the John Gerardi Show and Right to Life Radio on Power Talk 96.7 FM in Fresno. He and his wife live in Clovis with their 5 kids.
There you go.
Awesome.
That is correct. All of those things are true. But there's one lie.
2 truths and a lie.
4 truths and a lie.
He's like, figure it out.
I'm no longer living with my wife. No.
Or this would be when you drop like the "we're pregnant" announcement.
No. Eli, can I sleep on your couch?
She fired me.
Yeah, that's. I told her, hey, I'm doing a podcast on a weeknight. After working really late last night, and I got to work tomorrow, and some guys want to smoke cigars. Okay, yeah, you can sleep on Eli's couch. That's great.
But you got this, right, honey?
Yeah. All right.
Oh, and you're not getting paid for that one either?
Yeah. So, discussing my spiritual journey, I'm looking into Retrovi. Sorry, that's mean.
She can never listen to this.
For those who don't. All right. Anyway, just a joke. My wife has not kicked me out of the house. She
For
likes
full clarity underscore.
Full
Holly
clarity.
has not kicked you out.
We have a very stable marriage. That's what I keep telling myself. No, in all honesty, we're doing serious. We're doing great. Very stable marriage. She's not kicking me out because of Eli. So there we go. All right.
Okay. All right. I'm going to read a section from Veritatis Splendor.
One of my faves.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. So, God left man in the power of his own counsel. That's from Sirach 15, verse 14. Taking up the words of Sirach, the Second Vatican Council explains the meaning of that genuine freedom, which is an outstanding manifestation of the divine image in man. God willed to leave man in the power of his own counsel, so that he would seek his Creator of his own accord and would freely arrive at full and blessed perfection by cleaving to God.
There you go.
I'm just going to leave it there. I actually had a ton more, but
Oh yeah.
I know that we can talk, John. So.
Well, yeah. Well, so I had mentioned Veritatis Splendor to Eli before, and I'm more and more convinced that it's maybe the most important thing of the whole JP2 pontificate, because it kind of encapsulates almost every problem with ethics and bioethics that the church has been grappling with over the last 40, 50 years, and kind of the terms of engagement with those problems, where basically some of the even a lot of the arguments that we've been having in the church with stuff like fiducia supplicans, or things that we've been having arguments and debates in the church over with not familiaris consortia, with amoris laetitia, stuff like that. I feel as though a lot of the tension is with Veritatis Splendor, and with some of the stuff that John Paul II was laying out, not only about human freedom and how that relates to Western democracies and how they approach the question of human freedom, and how Western democracies almost undercut the very ideals of human freedom.
Yeah.
But also just the approach to these enormous ethical questions and the sort of absolute negative prohibitions of the natural law that should be sort of grounding how we approach these things, and not proportionalism and other things. I'm flying at 200,000 foot view
Yeah.
for all of this is a little big for a podcast where we were just joking about me being kicked onto the couch. But nonetheless,
we're practicers of blue collar Catholicism.
yeah, there you go.
You're amongst blue collars tonight, John.
Yeah. But I just think Veritatis Splendor was like the most important thing JP2 wrote, because I think his talk about freedom, especially, that basically you have Western democracies undercutting these sort of very basic ethical goods that wind up undercutting the very freedom that they sort of purport to be their most important value.
Yes.
So if you are, if you're promoting libertarianism to such an extent that you have a massive, widespread, every single kid with a smartphone plague of pornography, that's actually massively undercutting freedom in all kinds of ways. Not only the freedom of authentic individual self-control, but the physical freedom of people who are often coerced into working in that industry. And by elevating the, Mr. Right to Life over here.
Well, and then the fruit of that.
Yeah.
Right? Like the fruit of so many abortions that now exist.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because people are like, well, no, I get to do this freely. I can do whatever I want with my body, but they don't want to deal with the consequences of what that act is meant for.
And the consequence being the complete denial of freedom to all of, millions and millions and millions of unborn children who don't get to see the light of day.
Yeah.
And, JP2 in Veritatis Splendor talks about that, how this over-exaltation of freedom, or I think in the modern context, like autonomy as like the ultimate end-all, be-all good, it actually winds up being a contest of the strong against the weak. And that's actually really undercutting freedom more so than so you have this vicious cycle in liberal democracies where we're promoting freedom, but at the same time it's undercutting any kind of authentic freedom. So I do think in my work, which is wildly pretentious,
very British of you,
incredibly pretentious, but I think with all of my work between Right to Life and all the stuff we teach at Right to Life, but all the whatever I yap about on the radio, all my different ventures, I think even more so that I think a lot of people are, well, you're Mr. Pro-Life, so you must like Evangelium Vitae. That's John Paul II's encyclical on the abortion issue. And yes, Evangelium Vitae is really good and really important and wonderful. But I think Veritatis Splendor is sort of the most fundamental.
The groundwork.
Yeah, that's the basis on which everything else is built.
Yeah.
And even like the ways in which certain cardinals who live in San Diego have argued, like there have been these bizarre arguments from the 60s.
If you say it under your breath on a mic,
everyone can still hear it.
Let me Google cardinals.
Okay, so all right, well, let's not be coy. Okay,
and he doesn't mean when the St. Louis Cardinals come to play the Padres.
The Padres, no.
I mean, there's only one cardinal in San Diego.
It wasn't when Albert Pujols got traded to the Angels.
Be frank.
Yeah, so Cardinal, what's his face? Oh gosh, who's the Bishop of San Diego?
Manny, can you look that up?
Yeah. Oh shoot! I had his name on the top of my head. All right, so
we've insulted him enough. Now we're not going to remember his name.
So he publishes. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I am blanking on this man's name. I have talked
it's okay. It happens to me all the time.
All right. So basically, one of he has this whole piece that he's resurrecting.
McElroy?
Cardinal McElroy. Okay, so Cardinal McElroy is actually a very well-educated person. Okay. Very well-educated even amongst bishops.
Okay.
Like PhD from Stanford in political science, doctorate from the Pontifical Gregorian University, like Harvard undergrad, Stanford, like super-duper smart.
Yeah.
And he has this whole article he issued about 6 months ago in which he's talking about different kinds of sexual sins, and he's very sort of
Vague?
very sort of
Ambiguous?
liberal leaning and trying to sort of argue that, well, maybe certain kinds of things that we would normally designate as sexual sins maybe aren't always mortal sins, and trying to say, well, the proportional weighting of the totality of one's life circumstances, maybe proportionally speaking, we can't. He's basically resurrecting proportionalism, which was sort of this fad in American moral theology that like Charles Curran and these others were promoting in the 60s and 70s, to sort of say, well, no, the absolute negative judgments of the natural law. Well, no. Well, if unless someone has a fundamental option to turn away from God, then that would be bad. But one act of whether it's masturbation or this or that, no, that we're not going to judge that to be a serious sin. We're not going to judge that.
To me, it sounds like this super wide crack in the door for just relativism.
Well,
it's like,
and for homosexuality.
Yes,
I think is sort of what we're kind of driving at.
Gotcha.
And it's all this stuff that JP2 already has condemned in Veritatis Splendor, where JP2 like demolished proportionalism.
Yeah.
And so they have to use these same arguments, but they just can't say the word proportionalism. Because they know that, well, if I say proportionalism, everyone knows that JP2, so I have to like kind of cleverly get around it. So and
he's not alive anymore.
And he's not around to yell at you, or he's not allowed to, like that one liberation theologian that he like lectured at on the tarmac, and the guy got his career was over. I think that a lot of the bad ethical thinking that we have among people in the church, and a lot of the sort of worst kind of ways of looking at, again, the Mors Laetitia or Fiducia Supplicans, whatever, it comes out of, I think those things, the only way to kind of ground those things and reconcile those things in accord with Catholic teaching is to not jettison Veritatis Splendor. And I think a lot of people wish that Veritatis Splendor hadn't been written and that it wasn't on the book. So reading it in undergrad was, for me, at Notre Dame, because I'm a Notre Dame graduate, so I am contractually obligated to brag about the fact that I went to Notre Dame. How do you know someone went to Notre Dame?
For clarity to the listener that isn't watching on YouTube, he's wearing a Notre Dame jacket.
The days when I don't wear an article of Notre Dame clothing somewhere on my body are fewer than the days when I do.
Whoa.
Yeah, well, it's happening.
Hey, John, you're not wearing any Notre Dame today. I am.
Oh, trust me.
I was waiting for it in the bio, and it never came.
It's near and dear today.
I can't believe I didn't put it in the bio. I would have bragged. Yeah. So, all right. So here's my big Notre Dame brag. Okay, here we go. So, I was at Notre Dame 7 years. 7 years of college wasted. 4 years of undergrad, 3 years of law school, and I had one class with future Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett.
Had a baby.
Oh. She was pregnant with her 7th child.
Nice.
That's beautiful.
And pretty darn smart, as one would imagine for a future Supreme Court Justice.
Just pretty.
Pretty darn smart. Also very pretty, because all the boys in Notre Dame Law School were kind of in love with her. And so her big thing was she taught the basic evidence class.
Okay.
And so she would use clips from the movie My Cousin Vinny, starring Joe Pesci and Marissa Tomei, and she permanently had the law library's copy of it checked out.
That's so awesome.
And so that was her big teaching method for how do you qualify someone as an expert witness? Well, let's see how Joe Pesci qualifies Marissa Tomei, Mona Lisa Vito,
or doesn't.
Yeah. Well, you did a good job. You showed that she either had education or experience in the relevant subject matter sufficient to provide an expert opinion, which an expert opinion means that she can give a statement as to the truth of the ultimate legal claim. Anyway, so
real quick.
Yeah.
I kind of want to make this the funnest episode for the listener we've had so far.
Okay.
Drinking game. Anytime Notre Dame is mentioned,
take a drink. No, if this is a Catholic podcast, then we cannot morally do that, because it reminds me of the time I saw Brady Quinn lead the Irish to victory in, I believe it was 2006 against UCLA.
So To finish out,
All right.
Veritatis Splendor. Have you heard of the shopping cart theory?
I have not heard of the shopping cart.
Okay, I'm going to read this.
Okay.
So this was sent to me by Travis McDonald. I'm going to give credit where it's due. Okay, and this he actually resent it this morning. He sent it like a number of years back in this text chain that I'm in.
Was that for episode 5 or? Oh, no. You guys record really infrequently.
He hasn't been on yet.
Okay.
The shopping cart is the ultimate litmus test for whether a person is capable of self-governing. To return the shopping cart is an easy, convenient task, and one which we all recognize as the correct, appropriate thing to do. To return the shopping cart is objectively right. There are no situations other than dire emergencies in which a person is not able to return their cart. Simultaneously, it is not illegal to abandon your shopping cart. Therefore, the shopping cart presents itself as the apex example of whether a person will do what is right without being forced to do it. No one will punish you for not returning the shopping cart. No one will fine you or kill you for not returning the shopping cart. You gain nothing by returning the shopping cart. You must return the shopping cart out of the goodness of your own heart. You must return the shopping cart because it is the right thing to do, because it is correct. A person who is unable to do this is no better than an animal, an absolute savage, who can only be made to do what is right by threatening them with a law and the force that stands behind it. The shopping cart is what determines whether a person is a good or bad member of society. I like this a lot.
I think Matt Walsh wrote that.
I think St. Augustine wrote that.
So I haven't picked. This is the thing.
And then Abraham Lincoln.
I haven't tried to like pick holes in it. Wait a second. Okay, let's break this down. But it really holds that first pass. Like for me, it was like.
Well, okay. The last sentence got me mad. Okay, so here we go. All right. So this is a big. Okay.
Before you go into that, I was just going to say I'm old enough to remember when you'd get a quarter for returning the shopping cart. So.
Go to Aldi, baby. You got to give a quarter, you get a quarter.
Aldi still do that?
Aldi does that. Yeah, just at Herndon and
down the way.
Yeah, just down the way.
John's clinking his pocket.
Yeah, man. Man.
Sorry.
All right. So this is my. This is one of my big contentions, and even in the right to life world. Okay, so in the world of pro-lifers, people will constantly say, well, law is downstream of culture. We don't need to make abortion illegal. We need to make abortion unthinkable. And the people who say that are very well-meaning, good people. And I don't mean to, blast them into oblivion or anything. But I think they're all wrong. So, this is my thought about law. Law gets a bad name because lawyers are jerks. And law in a Catholic context has gotten a very bad name in the last, 50 or 60 years because Jesus wasn't about the law. Jesus was about love and
the spirit.
And the spirit, yeah. And I think when you actually understand the definition of law and what law is, it's not as yes, Jesus was often criticizing the lawyers of the Old Testament Jewish law. But I think when you kind of understand law, you get a little better sense of why it's actually not so bad. So law is a dictate of reason ordered towards the common good, given by someone with authority. So a dictate of reason towards the common good by a competent authority. So St. Thomas talks about 4 categories of law. You've got eternal law as far as the way that God formulated the whole universe. Mm-hmm. Dictates of reason towards the common good given by a legitimate lawmaker, God. You have natural law, which is a subcategory of that, which is basically how God made us, mm-hmm. how God made humans. So stuff that's built into our nature, goods that were ordered to, God made them. So God is the lawgiver of natural law. He set it up. And then you've got positive law, which is stuff that's maybe not inherent in our nature, but someone's telling us to do it anyway. So you have divine positive law and human positive law. So God gives us divine positive law. Don't receive the Eucharist if you've committed a mortal sin. Yeah. Don't receive other sacraments if you've committed a mortal sin. Go to These are things that aren't necessarily, like, they didn't necessarily have to be that way. It wasn't necessarily like, it's not something like, thou shalt not lie. Thou shalt not lie is cooked into how we are.
Yes. Yeah.
By the lawmaker.
Natural law.
Talking is for communicating truth. Lying is a perversion of that. Therefore, it's wrong. Okay, so you have divine positive. So, eternal law, natural law, divine positive law, human positive law.
Okay.
So human positive law is supposed to be, again, a principle of reason given by a legitimate authority oriented towards the common good. So in that sense, it's not something that's inherently bad, nor is it, I think some people say, well, if people were really good, there wouldn't need to be any law. Oh, hold on there, Sparky. Mm-hmm. Like, there would have to be still some law. Like, the eternal law would still have to be. The natural law would still need to be followed. And maybe there's some divine positive laws. Law is not just... I think some people think that law...
It's like one
as
category.
A concept, that it's only this one thing. And that it's only there because... And I think some people, even dangerously, think that law only exists because human beings are evil. Mm-hmm. And the only purpose of law is to restrain our wild, raging horses because we're such jackasses who don't return the shopping cart. And
it's kind of Protestant.
It's very Protestant. It's very Protestant. Yeah. And so with all that said, rant number 2. So
subset.
People constantly say this thing that, like, law is downstream of culture. You got to change the culture before you change the law. And I think that's bunk. Here's why. Law has a very powerful, in addition, because it's ordered towards the common good, and by the common good, St. Thomas is not talking about, like, I think some people have this notion of the common good when they hear that phrase, that they think it means, well, we had a vote and 55 of us think this is the good thing to do and 45 of you think that's the right thing. So that's the common good is what 55 of you... No. The common good in Catholic thought is the good that is common to everybody. It's everyone. It's what everyone is actually authentically ordered towards. So it's not a relativist, democratic, what y'all think. The common good is what is for the benefit of everybody. So, where the heck was I going with this? So when law is put in place to help govern the people towards what is, it's governing you towards what is the good. Mm-hmm. And as a result, I actually think certainly there can be cultural changes that result in the law changing. I'm not saying it's 100% that way, but I think law very powerfully influences how people think and act. Prior to Roe v. Wade, most people in America thought abortion was pretty distasteful.
Yeah.
And didn't think about it, didn't like it. If you asked them, they'd probably say no. And then, 15 years after Roe v. Wade, like 60, 70% of Americans thought legal abortion was totally fine.
Yeah.
And we were at the absolute high water mark of public support for abortion.
I mean, case in point.
Yeah.
First wave feminism, I just learned this recently, was started by primarily Protestant women.
Yeah.
Who would were rolling in their graves when, like, second, third wave feminism, like, came along and was like, oh no, like we should have the pill and we should have, condoms. And those were all developed by men, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Like it's shocker that just kind of gets, it's all for women power. And it's like, no. The first wave were actually, like, fighting for legitimate, to your point, like, no, women should be able to vote. Like, that's a
vote or
like,
do
like the certain principles that hold in a free society where it's like, yes, if they have the ability to think and critically analyze a particular character or legislative law that's going to be passed, they should have the ability to
vote. Yeah.
Vote on that, right? But then it moves beyond that, and they would lose their mind. It's like, no, that's not what we were fighting for. But anyways, continue.
Well, and even, I mean, all the original suffragettes were, like, super pro-life. I think they would have been appalled at the idea of, of feminists supporting abortion. But I do genuinely think that there a lot of even conservative-leaning people, religious-leaning people, don't think about law actually is a very powerful teacher for human conduct. And if you don't believe me, like, look at how public acceptance of gay marriage has progressed in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And why? Well, if gay marriage is legal in California, what the heck do you think California public schools are going to do? You think they're going to not have examples in their curricula of gay couple? Well, Timmy went to his two dad. If Timmy has one dad and his dad marries another dad, how many dads does Timmy have? They're going to do that because it's legal.
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
Yeah.
Otherwise, what am I going to say? Oh, well, it's highly immoral. Yeah, but it's legal. This is a public school. It's California. So I just think law has this powerfully educative effect on people, for better or for worse, because the point of law is to guide you towards some common good, towards some sort of moral message.
To Veritatis Splendor, to a complete autonomy, which is what God wants us to exist in, right? It's a freedom that's ordered towards the good. Mm-hmm. So to me, like, how would you frame it in terms of, because you talked about the Catholic sense of law as being what's for the good of all of us, right? Yeah. Not necessarily what's just like in terms of a law that addresses a certain issue. I'm saying,
yeah.
Well,
it's
please,
and it's not just the Catholic. It's the more broadly Aristotelian sense of law. Okay, so some people have laughed about this, that modern day American conservatism is caught in a tug of war between the Enlightenment and the Bible. So the Enlightenment, one of the main things the Enlightenment changed about politics was, they said, this Aristotle guy, got to get his ass out of here. And a lot of it was reacting to the wars of religion in Europe, Catholics and Protestants fighting each other and killing each other. And they basically said, all right, we need to get out of the idea that there is a single good for human beings that's knowable, towards which all men are ordered, and as part of that one single good, a bunch of lesser goods that we can know. So what liberal Enlightenment thinkers started to say was basically, there's no knowable moral order. There's no knowable natural law that is universally binding on everyone, and it's not the state's responsibility to order you towards it. Yeah. So everyone gets to choose the good for themselves. Everyone needs to be free to choose the good for themselves. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Everyone choose your own goods for yourselves. The government's not going to mandate a single good for you. And so that's been the problem. One of the difficulties of American conservatism is that we're caught between these classical liberal ideals of that, John Locke and the framers were expressing, of everyone choose the good for themselves, these very libertarian ideas of everyone free to choose the good for themselves. But if you really follow that to its absolute logical conclusions, and I think the history of American American progressives has been to follow those things to their logical conclusions more and more and more and more until gay marriage.
Well, even just cultural progression.
Yeah.
Right? Not even necessarily progressives, but like just as a culture, we start out where we did, and now we're at where we're at.
Right, and that's what... It was actually this guy, Joseph Bottom, who I always thought was kind of a dope, and he used to be the editor of First Things. But the one thing he said that's always stuck with me is that American conservatism...
Tell us how you really feel, John.
I always thought he was a dumb... His name was Joseph Bottom.
Last name.
How can you respect a guy named Bottom? Anyway, Joey Butts that was his mafia name. All right, I don't think he was in the mafia. So he had this line, though, that's always stuck with me that I think was really true. American conservatism is in a tug of war between the Bible and
that's interesting.
and the Enlightenment, and it's because American conservatives, American freedom, capitalism, and even capitalism as an economic system is premised on this idea of every individual making their own choices for the good for themselves without necessarily having a purely laissez-faire capitalist order, which the church, and this is why the church was very heavily critical of capitalism in various respects, to have this sort of choosing the economic good, everyone making their own free economic decisions without the state coming in and interfering and messing it up, because everyone needs to be free to choose their own private goods. And that can lead to, the problem is, that can lead to massive injustices, like, Oliver Twist, Dickensian characters.
Like $1 billion industry.
Yeah, like $1 billion industry of people murdering babies,
or billions. I should say.
Yeah, exactly.
Multiply,
and the elevation of autonomy and freedom then looks at human beings who are hindrances on autonomy and freedom as lesser thans and as people to be discarded.
Because they're not allowing
me to pursue the good, and that's the most important thing is life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Now, in America, that has always been moderated by the Bible.
Yeah, because
a decent number of people, at any rate, were still Christians. Not quite Thomas Jefferson, not quite Ben Franklin, guys like that. That's why
they were still going to France and doing.
Yeah, that's why Ben Franklin was, hey ladies, want to hang out with a bald guy with long hair
on the sides of his
head? And apparently the answer was yes. So, but that's the thing. We always had this moderating force of usually Protestant Christianity, but we always had this moderating force in America of Christianity to not go completely, that had some sense of what marriage was and what the values of family, but as that social order breaks down, I think a lot of American Catholics didn't have maybe the vocabulary or the way of thinking of these things to sort of respond to it. So anyway,
I think a beautiful way of seeing this, and I mean not so beautiful in terms of the outcome, but like the idea of that, the subtlety of how the devil basically puts us to sleep by this thought, right? Like where it's this slow progression.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like if we got slapped, right? Like with, let's just start doing this, right? Like what we're currently in, like as a culture to 250 years ago. No, like we've arrived very gradually because it's this like, I'm just going to get slowly put to sleep, right? I'm going to slowly acquiesce and become just a slumbering giant.
Right. Well, and even like to enforce that, the slide from, American Catholics, in the 20s, we tried to run one guy in 1928, one Catholic for president, and that was a disaster, Al Smith. And Catholics were for decades and decades and decades, Catholics were wanting to enter the mainstream of American society. They wanted to be accepted in American society to such an extent, fun Notre Dame story, to such an extent that, so here we go. Take a shot, boys. Father Sorin, the French priest who founded Notre Dame, was very much, and he founded it in like 1868, and in the late 1800s, like all these like sobriety movements were like, the movements that would eventually lead to prohibition, and all these like teetotalers were everywhere, and he really wanted to fit in with broader American society.
Interesting.
So at his 50th anniversary of ordination to the priesthood, Father Sorin has a big mass at the big church in Notre Dame, and invites bishops and the Gazillion priests, and for the dinner banquet they have afterwards, they serve water and nothing else. That's awesome. And there was actually this genuine tug of war at Notre Dame between the French priest. So Notre Dame was originally founded by French priests who were coming from France via Quebec, came into the north,
hence Notre Dame.
Yeah. But then, whom were they recruiting? Well, they were recruiting a bunch of Irish, new entrants into the Congregation of Holy. The Congregation of Holy Cross was the religious community that founded Notre Dame, and there got to be this real, actual, very big disagreement in the community about St. Patrick's Day. And the Irish priests were like, we want to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. And Father Sorin was like, and the French priests were like, no, it's just a day in Lent. We're not celebrating. And the Irish priests were like, we will win out by sheer demographics. And indeed, that is what happened. So, yes.
Numbers.
But this striving, so it raised the point that there was this striving in American Catholicism. We want to be accepted. We want to be part of American culture. We want to be successful. And then finally, we did it. John Kennedy gets elected president. But what does he do? He gives this speech where he sort of completely embraces these sort of principles of liberalism and sort of says, well, if the dictates of my religion come up against, what's best for the country, I'm going to do what's best for the country because we live in a pluralistic society. I can't impose Catholicism. And then that gets echoed. That this is one of the most importantly bad speeches in American Catholic history was 1984. The two most famous priests in America at the time were Father Richard McBrien, who's the head of theology at Notre Dame, and Father Ted Hedsberg, the president of Notre Dame, who did enormous damage to American Catholicism, I think. And they invited Mario Cuomo to come to Notre Dame, who's the governor of New York. Andrew Cuomo's dad. Andrew and Chris Cuomo's dad.
I was just going to say, shocker, it runs in the family.
Yeah. And Andrew Cuomo gave...
But nepotism doesn't happen in America.
It's all right. This is only the fifth straight election that either Joe Biden or Donald Trump have run it. That's actually true. You can look that up. Joe Biden's been running for president since before I was born. He started in 1987. Mario Cuomo gives the 1984 update of that famous Kennedy speech from 1960, more or less, and he's talking about specifically abortion. And he says, look, we live in a pluralistic American society, liberalism, where everyone chooses the good for themselves, and therefore it's inappropriate of me to impose my Catholic dogmatic views on abortion on the broader society, because basically he's accepted all these sort of ideas of liberalism that, the good is not knowable objectively. This lack of confidence, anyway, that the good is knowable and that the government has absolutely no role in imposing it, and that's how everyone is free.
Yeah.
Ignoring what a complete lack of freedom he's offering, to all the babies who get killed and all the women who get coerced into this horrible, this horrible lack of freedom that is really what's involved with abortion.
What's so fascinating, though, too, is now more recently with all of the biographies that come out, you realize that a lot of his speech is also reflective of all the fornicating he was doing.
Of JFK and
and it's legitimately, he's getting faced with the reality of, you either need to go to confession or keep living this lie.
Yeah.
Right? Well, because he had to get addressed with some sort of situation where it was like, hey, you decided to have sex with this woman, and now she's telling you she's going to have a baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and he's going, no, you're not going to derail what I've worked for my whole life.
Yeah. Well, or even I think with Kennedy, we don't know everything with Kennedy. I mean, we know it's pretty well documented he was going all over the place, and I mean you do that with that many women. I mean, statistically speaking, there was probably someone who was either shunted aside or aborted or something. I do think, though, there's also, just at a more fundamental level, I'm going to jettison anything particular about Catholicism for the sake of assuring these people so that I can get elected, and I think that's 100% what the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Ave did at various points in his career, where
and quadrupled down many times over.
Even the greatest example of this was in 2019, where the Hyde Amendment is this rider that gets attached to the federal budget every year, and it cuts off direct federal funding for abortion in federal healthcare programs like Medicaid. So Medi-Cal's the California version of it. And Biden had only supported it for 2019, only for 43 years. So his entire 30-something year career in the Senate, he voted for it every year. All 8 years as vice president. he continued to support the Hyde Amendment.
Yeah.
A lot of Democrats supported the Hyde Amendment. This was back when they thought abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. Now they don't think it should be rare.
At all.
No, well, they've changed the language. Now it's safe, legal, and accessible. And that's a very specific...
Yeah.
That rare means that maybe you don't want to publicly fund it. Accessible means if someone can't afford it, the government should pay for it, because that's how you get access. Anyway, so Biden it's 2019. Biden had maintained this position for 43 years. He gets asked about it during a campaign stop. Hey, are you gonna get rid of the Hyde Amendment? He's like, yeah, the Hyde Amendment's got to go, because he didn't really understand he couldn't remember what the Hyde Amendment was when he was asked. And it was clearly a Biden.
It was right after you stumbled going up the stairs.
It was clearly a Biden senior moment, which we're learning a lot about this week. So he has a senior moment. His staffers then have to scramble the next day and say, no, President Biden, he has not changed his position on the Hyde Amendment. And this caused all of the left-wing activists to go, all the abortion activists on the left just go crazy. And within basically 48 hours, Joe Biden changed this position he had held for 43 years, because he realized, I probably can't get the nomination if I don't change my position on the Hyde Amendment, because that's just...
But then never followed through, right?
Well, and now he officially does not support the Hyde Amendment.
Okay.
And he's undercut, I think it has barely been maintained on the strength of, Joe Manchin, the first 2 years, because he was the one Democrat senator who kept supporting it. So no, he officially abandoned a policy position he'd held for 43 years, and which he also said was because of his strong Catholic faith. In 1 week, in 2019, out the window, which calls to mind the great Groucho Marx quote, "Those are my principles, and if you don't like them, well, I have others." So that was basically that's Joe Biden. So anyway, not to get all political, but
no.
But I think it relates. I think there was this American Catholic striving for acceptance in society, and it led to an embrace of too great of an embrace of these sort of liberal ideals, these classical liberal ideals of. There's no objective. Everyone chooses the good for themselves. There's no objective moral order that should be, tempered by the natural law. So there you go.
Set the stage for just shitty examples of Catholics in the public sphere for our entire lives. I mean, I'm thinking of it was Tim Kaine, right? When they asked him about abortion, he's like, "Well, personally, I'm against it, but." Politically,
right?
Well, what does that even mean?
That was Tim Kaine, right?
And that's the perfect distillation of this liberal ideal. Yes, I personally and individually, I will choose these goods for myself and my family, or maybe my family, how I'm ordering things.
Yeah.
But the state is to be, neutral on this question, and the state should only intervene when people are stepping on other people's toes as far as their ability to choose the good. But then you can kind of see the inherent the flaw with that.
The logic does not follow.
Yeah. Well, and especially as you get to, the more people are an inconvenience on autonomy, the more that we try to make some argument that our autonomy should outweigh. Our autonomy should outweigh their, right to this good. And then, their burden on us, is it just the physical burden of a pregnancy? Is it the financial burden of a pregnancy and childbirth and child care? Or is it even the physical or financial burden of this very elderly person who's got cancer and treatment would be really expensive, but it's pretty cheap? This is physician-assisted suiciding them, which the Canadian government has more and more realized, and immediately they start publishing articles. Oh wow, there's a lot of cost savings to be had for physician-assisted suicide.
Again, capitalists.
Yeah, well, and it's autonomy is like this great thing until people start being an inconvenience to your autonomy, or an inconvenience to. The financial, the budget of and when you got government run socialized medicine, you can't afford a Cadillac for everybody.
Yeah.
Like maybe you can afford a Honda Accord, but you can't afford a Cadillac for everybody.
Yeah. But this will free up. We get rid of this demographic, and it'll free up to where everyone else can have a Cadillac.
Yeah, or everyone else can have everyone else can have sex change, hormone therapy or something. And that. God knows we can get
You mean body mutilation?
Well, yeah. Well, and
let's not use the language that's out there.
Well,
I hate it.
Well,
I'm so tired of it.
And that is again the ultimate expression of so a great book on all this is another thing I'm having a brain fart about by one of my Notre Dame professors. Carter Sneed.
Q.
Yeah, there you go.
This Carter is coffee, by the way. It's not.
Yeah. And mine's water. So Carter just so we're clear.
We're just being funny.
Okay, so the book recommendation. I should have put this on my book list. What It Means to Be Human by O. Carter Sneed.
Okay.
The O stands for Orlando.
Nice.
Oh. So he was one of my professors at Notre Dame. He was the general counsel for President Bush's bioethics council. So President Bush started this bioethics council, which was kind of responsible for advising him to cut off federal funding for embryo-destructive stem cell research. So I don't know how many of you guys might. This was like the first actually really significant thing George W. Bush did before 9/11. Was there was the debate over embryonic stem cell research, and so he had this council. So my professor, Professor Sneed, who I'm still waiting on a rec letter for him for a job I applied for 12 years ago.
So if you're listening to this,
so hey, Carter, come on, baby, still waiting here.
Baby,
Orlando, come on. He's an awesome guy. So he served as general counsel for the bioethics council, and he has this great book, What It Means to Be Human, where he's talking about basically a lot of the philosophical undergirdings of modern day movements for abortion, the modern gender movement, physician-assisted suicide, and one of the things he sort of identifies is the idea of expressive individualism.
Okay.
So expressive individualism is kind of a philosophical sort of collection of ideas about human nature and what it means to be human. And he sort of identifies it as the perfect distillation of it is be all that you can be. So what's at the core of the human experience is having a conception of the self and actualizing it, achieving your dreams, achieving who you want to be, visualizing yourself and your own future goals and aspirations. And that's the core of the human experience. And anything that is a deterring of that or a hindrance to that or a limitation on that is illegitimate. And if you have a mindset like that, it makes the whole transgender movement make sense.
Yes.
And it's unfortunately for, I think, good people, and there's a lot of good people who I think have sort of imbibed those ideas as being normative for what is good in life.
Yeah.
Well, you should be who you want to be. You just feel like if that's who you really feel like you are, then that's who you are. And the problem with that is that, for one thing, it's kind of an ableist view. Like, if anyone has like a disability, like they're kind of screwed by that notion of what it means to be human. So no Down syndrome people actually have an authentic human experience. A lot of people with even various kinds of physical handicaps, not just mental handicaps, but other physical handicaps. Are they going to be all that you can be? I mean, they're not going to be a U.S. Marine, but their life still has meaning and value. And it's a whole mindset that's completely divorced from the body. Your value is very subjective, and it's very like, what's rattling around between your ears. And so
Sneed's calling this out.
So yeah,
in
so
the
he's
book.
And he's basically saying like this is fundamentally ableist. It's fundamentally excluding whole categories of human beings that we should protect.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of brilliant because he is himself a very devout Catholic.
Okay.
But he's making these kind of bioethics arguments from not explicitly Catholic premises. A lot of really good natural law thinking premises. And he instead proposes these ideals of, well, at the core of the human experience is maybe things that are a bit more objective, and the obligations attendant to living as a person in a community that, for so much of the discourse around abortion, for example, that he talks about, we're treating unborn children like they're complete strangers, like that there's some sort of, well, the mom didn't agree to have to raise this baby. Like, there wasn't a contractual handshake agreement here, so therefore, to which he responds, well, that's not how real human relationships work. That's not actually what it means to be human. Real, authentic human relationships involve stuff like, okay, if my mom and dad get really, really sick, I'm going to have to take care of them, and I didn't agree to that, and I don't want to have to take care of them, but I have to.
I have to.
Yeah. And human life involves unasked for, not contractually agreed to, obligations of duty and care and love. And the cool part is that they are reciprocal. That, yes, you start your life really dependent, but then in your time of strength, you're taking care of other people. And then guess what, baby? At the end of your life, you're probably going to be really dependent again.
Yep.
And that's natural and good. And that is something far more fundamental to the human experience, and something that gives a far better grounding of dignity and care to a much broader swath of people, regardless of just quite how smart they are or just quite how inconvenient they are, to a much broader group. And I remember I remembered reading it like right after my dad got diagnosed with cancer, and I read it right after that, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, which I was not thinking in a bioethics book.
Would work,
yeah, and because that's what it is. That's what, like, my mom doesn't want to be a full-time caretaker for a really sick guy. In-home nurse for a really, really sick guy with a couple of bags hooked up to him and a lot of tons of meds.
Have you heard of Father Augustine Wetta?
Augustine, what? What a guy! No, I have not.
So he's a.
He sounds like a Dominican.
Dominican, yeah, he's a Dominican, and he was talking exactly about
any guy named Augustine is usually not an accident.
It's awesome. He's talking about how he met this very large dude, and he's working through with him. He's being a spiritual father to him, and this man shares with him. He's like, I'm so conflicted, Father, because I've been told my whole life to chase my dreams and do all this stuff, right? Father's like, okay, give me examples of what this looks like. And he's like, in high school, I was told because of my frame, I could make it through high school. I could get a scholarship if I played football, and I got really good at football. So he's like, I didn't take no for an answer. I showed up multiple times throughout my college career trying to just walk on all this stuff. Finally, the coach lets him play one game in his the back half of his senior year.
Rudy Rudiger situation.
Yes, but terrible. He's terrible, right? And then additionally, he then goes on and goes, okay, that didn't work out. I'm going to become a neurosurgeon. I have the wherewithal, gets his PhD, the whole bit, goes to surgery, ends up killing multiple people under surgery. Okay. And he's just dying in front of Father Augustine.
Yeah.
And Father Augustine's like, I wasn't mad at him. I had to have mercy on him because I'm thinking of all these people in his life that have not stepped forward and said, dude, that's not for you.
Yeah.
You need to, these are your gifts. Yeah. People had to recognize somewhere along the way that's probably not your gift.
Not for you, yeah.
And they should have said something then, right? That's the onus is on them in terms of, we live in this culture. Rather, from a Christian perspective, we all shy away from wanting to be critiqued and get criticized, right? Constructively.
Yeah.
But the reality is we desire it.
Yeah.
Really, like at our core, from a natural perspective, we do want to be better.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Bernard of Clairvaux had a whole work on humility, and where he viewed it as it's just a greater appreciation of truth, of reality. It's a greater appreciation of you are really, really small and really weak and really dependent on God, and God is really great and really infinite. And so, but I love that framing of his, that it's just a understanding of what's actually true. That's actually what humility is. I remember C.S. Lewis talked about that too, where he was like being humble doesn't mean like being a great artist and saying you're a crappy artist. It's like,
or being timid.
You
can confuse meekness with timidity.
Yeah,
right?
Lewis would be like, like a great artist would be happy that he's a good artist, but humble enough to recognize, I had some gifts and God gave me the grace to work hard, but I'm happy that I'm a good artist. And I think when it comes to expressive individualism, like you're saying, the refusal to accept certain kind of basic facts of, like, for example, biology. Like, you can be a boy who thinks he's a girl all you want, but there is some basic biology, and the denial that, and that's to the extent to which this denial is happening. To the point of, in California, you can legally change your driver's license. You can legally change, like, documents that like a doctor might have for you when you're going into the ER, where maybe they might want to know that you're actually, your chromosomes are XY and not XX. And even it's getting to the point of where California is doing this. It's starting to happen just in the context of divorce proceedings, where, like, if you've got two parents, one is affirming a child in their gender identity other than their biological sex, and the other is not, well, in divorce proceedings, child custody disputes, that's going to go to the person who's affirming this child. And I feel like we're on the road to, if this goes by its logical conclusion, we're going to be on the road to, if you don't affirm your kid's transgender identity,
then you're the enemy.
Well, that you're engaged in child abuse. And that's
so the legal, again, back to like a bastardization of the legal system.
Well, and that's the that's the thing. Child abuse is one of the points where the rubber meets the road of liberalism, where yes, you're free to choose the good, until you do something that's really harming your kid. You're free to choose your own good. You want to choose the good for yourself until you're, a Jehovah's Witness and you're refusing a life-saving blood transfusion for your child. In which case, we're going to just step in and give your kid the blood transfusion. So I do think that that's where these. If your worldview is that the facts of biology, or if all that matters to human identity is what's rattling around up here, then yes, that makes total sense. Then that parent who says, no, I don't want to call my son a girl, if human reality is purely up here and it's a denial of your child's most treasured, inmost being, to say otherwise, then you're going to be deemed to be a child abuser, and maybe you lose your kid. I fear we're heading down that road. Until, thankfully,
that's the logical conclusion at this point.
It is the logical conclusion. Now, thankfully, there seems to be like.
Sorry about the smoke, Rick.
Yeah, Rick is just getting doused with smoke. Thankfully, there was one piece in the New York Times saying, hey, some of these people who regret transitioning, maybe we should listen to them, and maybe that's going to give
some thought.
Maybe that's going to give the broader culture. One New York Times article sort of allows the broader culture to sort of reconsider things, and that's happened in certain ways with the question of pornography. But anyway, so.
Okay.
But yeah, I think there we go. I've solved all of your problems and questions about human nature, ethics,
Veritatis Splinter, and shopping cart theory.
Shopping cart theory, the law.
There you go. Let's throw a log on the fire.
Okay.
Make sure we're not smoking Rick out, and then we'll jump back into we'll get back on track here.
Okay.
Cool. Hey guys, Eli here from Circa Ignem. Hope you're enjoying this week's guest so far. Just want to take a quick second to invite you to join our online community on all your social media platforms. We'll be sharing wholesome, Christ-centered content, and you can always stay up to date on the latest news and episodes. Listen, like, comment, subscribe, and share with all your friends. Thank you.
You should have waited to throw a log on the fire before.
And we're back.
Okay.
All right.
I hear there's a lightning round involved here. So,
all right. So, what's your wake up routine like?
Well, I have to record my radio show first thing in the morning. So I've had to get up earlier and earlier. So I'm really just get out of bed, throw on clothes, get in the car. I'm trying to do rosary in the car, just first thing in the morning, because I feel like there's no other time of day I can do the rosary without either falling asleep or blowing it off. So that's been, I think that's going to be the Lent
focus.
It's the Septuagesima / Lent focus is doing that, and then get to the radio station and rant and rave for a solid 40 minutes. And then get to work.
Do you have a podium that you can just like?
I bang on. I've got like a desk in front of me, and I'm banging on it. Yeah. I'm like there are sound effects. Yeah,
love it. Because watching you right now, like you're sitting there like banging. I'm like, dude, I need to go to the studio to watch him.
If you want to, it's like a caged animal. Yeah. No, I hit this thing.
I'm gonna get you some UFC gloves.
Well, when I first started.
Sitting there just
we will never acquiesce.
Yeah. You're about to do stuff to hit the mic. Yeah, I've done it before. Well, when I started, because every talk radio host is just doing a bad Rush Limbaugh impression. And when I started, I would occasionally I would bring in stuff like paper, and I say, I'm holding in my hands, and I'd ruffle it in front of, because Rush would always do that with a newspaper. But I am holding in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers, and he'd rustle the newspaper in front of them. So I would always do it. But so I do that, and then probably at work, I actually pray morning prayer, and then go for the day. So
awesome.
Yes. Morning prayer with my crazy Anglican prayer book thing.
Okay.
Not sort of the Anglican Catholics, the in the
now
Catholic
people
Church.
Are really
ones.
confused. John.
That's the whole thing.
The ones we like.
That's the whole thing. It's the ordinariate prayer book. The ordinariate prayer book.
Yep.
I'm really down into that because it's close enough to like the old Latin breviary to sort of feed my tratty little heart, but the old breviary takes a really freaking long time to do, and I can read Latin. I was Latin.
You don't enjoy all the flipping?
Yeah. I was a Latin major in college, so I can read Latin, but it takes a long time. It's a slog. So so reading it in English is a bit more.
Why abuse yourself, John?
Well, that's a good question. Well, that's my constant prayer life has been one long cycle of letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, and like, let me try to read the full old Latin breviary. It's okay. It's only 9 psalms at matins, and or you could just.
There's a reason why this is for ordained
this is for monks.
For monks.
They have nothing else to do.
Exactly.
Here's their schedule: Ora Labora. End of list. You know how much Ora these boys do? Hours. That's why they farmed wheat. Don't have to do much. Anyway, yeah. Okay. So I use the more efficient. The ordinary. So the ordinariates who got the former Anglicans who got received in the Catholic Church.
Yes.
So they have their own breviary, and it's based on the Book of Common Prayer. Mm-hmm. So it's actually really cool because it's just based around really 2 big hours. Just their matins, as they call it, morning, which is really a combo of Latin matins / office readings and lauds and prime kind of smushed together, and then evensong, which is basically vespers and compline kind of smushed together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of cool how they do it. So their psalter, you go through all 150 psalms in a month, but it's the whole psalm, every psalm in order from 1 through 150. So on September 1st at morning prayer, you pray Psalms 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. September 1st at evening prayer, you do Psalms 6, 7, and 8.
Nice.
September 2nd, morning prayer, you do, and so every 30 days, every month, you start over, and in February you get gypped out of some of the Psalms in the 140s, and then on days with 31 days, right? and then on months with 31 days, you got to kind of repeat the 140 through 150, more or less. So so it's actually really cool, and you actually it gets rid of certain things that annoy me as a Latin literate person that are still in the modern Liturgy of the Hours.
Gotcha.
Where like the modern printed Liturgy of the Hours still has all the terrible translations of like the collect and stuff that we were using before 2011, which are incredibly grating for someone who knows enough Latin to know like that is not what it said. I don't know what the Latin is, but I know it wasn't this.
That's not it.
But yeah, I know that the original Latin of this office did not have me singing the hymn for morning prayer for On Eagle's Wings or whatever. Whatever.
We're going back to Biden.
Whatever crap. Oh yeah, Joe Biden. Yeah, the one bit of Catholic culture that Joe Biden. So for those who are listening, at the National Prayer Breakfast, here's the second Catholic president of the United States giving a speech at the National Prayer Breakfast. And what Catholic art, literature, poetry, culture does he cite? Does he cite Dante? No. Does he cite no? On Eagle's Wings by Michael Jonkis, which was written in 1979. And he said it was based on Psalm 22, which it wasn't.
Which it wasn't.
No, it's kind of based on Psalm 91.
I was just going to say, I just read 91 recently, and I was like, this more follows than 22.
Yeah, Psalm 22 is like, my God, why have you forsaken me?
This doesn't even track.
It's a very important psalm, but it's not important enough for On Eagle's Wings. Yeah, so the crappiest hymn in the history of the entire Catholic Church. All right.
How many times have you been pulled over or interacted with the police?
I got pulled over like 2 weeks ago. And I got the first ticket of my life 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, leaving the radio station. I was just still on Twitter.
You didn't pull the, do you have any idea who I am card?
Because the answer would have been no.
Did you see the Notre Dame on the shirt?
I don't know if you're aware. I'm the second most popular local host on the second biggest talk radio station in Fresno, California. Yeah. I did though have the experience. I was doing a work thing. I'm in town, but I don't have my car, so I get an Uber to drive me from wherever I am back home. And it's 6:15, and my show is on Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And I get in the Uber, and whose voice meets me as I get into this Uber, because I pre-record my show in the morning. I'm listening to my own show that I just recorded that morning. The guy in the Uber is listening to. The Uber driver's a fan of Power Talk. And I said, "That's me." And he's like, "Oh yeah." I'm like, no, I'm sorry. And then I say to him, "No, I'm John Gerardi. That's my show. I am. You're John Gerardi. Oh, I listen to you every day." I'm like, wow, someone other than my mom listens to my show. This is great. So yeah. So I'm pretty sure
I thought you were going to go down the rabbit hole of whatever, dude.
Whatever.
And he keeps like you're John. Yeah.
No, he did. He believed me.
Or he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry. If you don't mind, I want to hear this."
Hey, can you shut up? This guy's making a really good point. But yeah, I still, to this day, I think my only audience is my mom and my dad. Not my wife. Absolutely not. But my mom and my dad.
I will be authentic here. I don't listen to everyone, but I do try and listen to the especially topic ones where I'm like, okay.
I listen to the podcast.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, guys. This is like the sweetest thing.
My favorite.
That's a clarification. The podcast. Version of it.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost.
I was still in Hanford a few weeks ago, and I had to almost pull over. I was laughing so hard when.
Oh man! When what did I say?
It was the Nikki Haley, and you're like, wasn't exactly disappointing for me because she came in second.
Well, the one that got me was the John Voight.
John Voight, where we were talking about how the only conservative celebrity that we can wrestle up. The only one we can get is John Voight. It's especially pro-lifers. Pro-lifers, if you're even vaguely possibly famous, we will put you on the stage at the National March for Life. So John Voight. I mean, the fact that we got Jim Harbaugh this year.
I didn't realize how pro-life he was.
Well, this is a very conflicting thing for me because I hate the University of Michigan so much. I hate them more than I hate USC.
So now all I need to do is just say Jim Harbaugh.
I'm just choked with blind rage every time I see that big dumb M. Gosh. So we had 2 losses to Michigan when I was in law school, and they had this quarterback named Denard Robinson, and he would play with his shoelaces untied, and that was his nickname, Shoelaces. And they always would play Notre Dame early in the year, and I swear Denard Robinson took football pills before he played Notre Dame, and he legitimately was in the Heisman Trophy conversation for both of those years solely based on his performance at Notre Dame, where he collected between passing and running a combined 8 miles on Notre Dame. We were unable to stop it, and then
if we
immediately
did the math, it's probably close to 8 miles.
And then the week after he plays Notre Dame, he became the most pedestrian, ho-hum, nothing burger quarterback. So he only looked like a Heisman Trophy winner specifically against us.
I'm sorry. I was listening to what you're saying. As a head coach, I would lose my mind if a player at that level of college football had his shoelaces untied.
Well,
boy, you are getting off the field. Until he tie those shoes.
Until he lost. I'd allow it until he lost a game, and then all right, well, sorry, buddy. 3 incomplete passes, and you're tying those damn shoes. Anyway, so yes, pro-lifers, we have the lamest celebrities, but Jim Harbaugh was a pretty good celebrity. I got so.
All right, so you got pulled over.
I got pulled over.
First time 2 weeks ago.
I also, I've been pulled over a couple times. That's the first time I actually got a ticket. I remember one time. Okay, I remember one time I got pulled over in Chicago, and my mom. I was at Notre Dame, and my mom had mailed me the insurance card that was in that's in the dashboard, and I handed it to the cop. He's a licensed registrar, handed him the registration, and it had a sticky note on it that I didn't see from my mom that said, "Love you, Mom." And this Chicago cop says, "Is this a note from your mom?" Yes, officer. So he let me off. Just made his day.
You're like, thanks, Mom.
This guy's too dumb. That's my grandpa's, my late grandfather from New York. His ultimate insult was, he couldn't even get arrested. Like, someone's so stupid that he couldn't get arrested. Which, coincidentally, was the special counsel's assessment of the current president of the United States. Anyway, so that literally he was too dumb to have been convicted of this crime.
Yeah.
So his memory is too faulty for us to actually convict him of illegally retaining highly classified information.
It's a pretty good hack, though.
He is officially qualified as geriatric.
Yeah. Or
With
maybe,
that statement.
or maybe he's like cunning like a fox, and he's like, oh, I don't even know where I am.
It's all a show.
I keep all the classified stuff about Afghanistan under the sea. Oh, where am I? Kamala, where are you?
I'm gonna go write a note from my mom on my registration.
I was going to say playbook.
I think that's a little more endearing when you're a scared 19-year-old little white kid, not so much when you're a 30-something-year-old man.
I really don't know Chicago, officer.
Well, I had my Indiana license plate, and I was like, looked like I was made out of corn. So
That's awesome.
all right. Anyway, lightning round. We're going great.
Yeah. What is your greatest accomplishment to date?
My greatest accomplishment to date, well, definitely not my kids. Only saying that because I'm sure every other goes, oh, my wife, my kids, my
You nailed
family.
it. Yeah.
All right. Yes, that's the best thing I've built.
All 12 of them.
Yes. And then it's like the Jim Gaffigan joke, like, well, when they have another kid, they're like, oh, congratulations. Well, I helped for 5 seconds doing the thing I think about all day, every day. Yeah.
Damn.
Family aside.
Are we getting real right now?
Family aside. Yeah. Family aside. And I'm very proud of my wonderful children. And I love my wife very dearly. I think we've got an awesome marriage. Family aside, probably opening our clinic is
that's legit.
The number one thing. Yes. Yeah. So that was out of right to that was a fruit of 40 Days for Life. So it was during a 40 Days for Life campaign, and we're out there praying, and we had rented. Well, no, we had not. Where our 40 Days for Life campaign was set up. So for those who don't know, 40 Days for Life is the national campaign where people pray outside of abortion clinics for 40 days. Hence the clever name. So it's 40 Days for Life in, I think it's in the autumn of 2017. And where we would set up, we're next to the Planned Parenthood clinic that's on Fulton Street, and we would set up next door, kind of on the sidewalk in front of this print shop. And the owner of the print shop was this Mormon guy who would let us set up there. Mm-hmm. And actually, it was kind of cool. Planned Parenthood, his parking lot and Planned Parenthood's parking lot were right up next to each other and kind of separated by a wall. And Planned Parenthood had tried to buy his parking lot, and he refused. He's like, I can't. Sorry, I don't agree with what you're doing. I can't do it. But he would let us set up. And we're out there praying, and he had moved out. He had moved to Utah.
Okay.
So his print shop was empty. And I looked at it.
What was the name of the print shop?
I don't even remember the name. Okay. It was some very random. It was like on Fulton Street, south of Olive, like very sketchy part of town.
Yeah.
And so he owned like the whole building. There was like this old computer shop, and there was a tenant who lived upstairs. But the print shop was empty. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it. I looked over at Planned Parenthood. I looked at it, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have like some kind of pro-life like clinic or something like right here, like right next door to Planned Parenthood?
That's so awesome.
Well, that actually would have been a terrible idea because the building was not at all equipped to be a medical facility because it's a big hunk of junk. But it was a great place to put a different Right to Life initiative. So Right to Life did rent it, okay, and now it's our outreach center.
Nice.
So basically, it's just the former print shop floor is just a big open space for our volunteers and our employees to hang out, have a cup of coffee, store signs, store literature. But the front office that he has is a nice private office where our employee Linda can directly talk with women or couples who are thinking about abortion in private. Yep. So we did that. But the idea to have a clinic was still there.
Yeah.
And that's harder to do than just kind of rent a building and start a little, not like an outreach center. So starting the clinic involved, we had to start a new corporation. We had to apply for 501c3 status. We had to find other people who were doing pro-life clinics of this sort. And we found this group called Obria that has a chain of these kinds of clinics that it's a little more than most like crisis pregnancy centers, whatever. Some of them are actually licensed clinics, but the only like medical services they do are like ultrasounds and pregnancy tests.
Gotcha.
So Obria is a little bit more. They're like full on OBGYN clinics, and you can actually like go there for the course of your pregnancy and have your baby be delivered through it. Yeah. So it has more of a medical focus and less of like I think a lot of like Pregnancy Care Center in Fresno. They're wonderful people. They do a lot of wonderful stuff. They have a lot of like parenting classes and material support and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's actually been nice because they can refer their clients to us for their actual, their ongoing medical care.
Awesome.
So, finding them, hooking up with them, figuring out licensure, getting a space, wading through seas of California red tape, and then fundraising. And, it's a very interesting feeling when a farmer gives you a check for $250,000 and says, "Here you go, kiddo." It's like you're holding a $250,000 check and you're just hoping you don't, drop it or something. So we got that initial fundraising capital to get it started, and we opened January 5th of 2022. So we've been around for 2 years, and so I was its founding CEO, and realizing that I probably can't be the CEO of that and director of Right to Life at the same time. And
getting stretched.
So I passed it off eventually to our head nurse, Melissa Champion is her name, and she does an amazing job. And so she's now the executive director, and I'm just in charge of fundraising. But yeah, starting Obria was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done, but the thing I'm kind of proudest of, because now it's like it's a fully functioning OBGYN clinic. It's serving all these people who don't otherwise have access to prenatal care. We're sending people who've considered abortion over there. Like, we've had, I think we're getting close to like 200 babies have been born through the clinic. Like, it's this perfect, place where I was literally, before I got here, I was on the phone with someone from up north in the mountains who was interacting with pregnant 14-year-old. Dad's 14 years old. They're not sure what to do. They're really nervous about the costs of having the baby. The parents of the boy, parents of the girl are very nervous about the cost of having a baby. So I'm able to say, hey, we have a clinic. We'll take high-risk pregnancies. We'll get them all set up. Come down here. Talk with us at Right to Life. We can get you set up with, So to build up that kind of circle of care, both through the clinic and the outreach, like that's what that's the thing I'm
That's
really
so cool.
proudest of. Yeah. So.
I mean, to your point, I think what I'm hearing you say too is that it was probably way more difficult than you thought when you first started out.
It has been more difficult at literally every stage of the process.
Yeah. And to boot, I don't know this for sure, but I have to imagine that especially in California, it's not just red tape.
Bro,
there is like people literally
red
going
rope, bungee cords. Bro, you want to start one of these in Texas? You just plug an ultrasound machine into the wall and you go. Like for us to get independently licensed, these mothers,
that was so close, John. You almost said it. I wanted you to say it.
These mofos, to be a licensed nonprofit sort of standalone clinic, you have to build your clinic according to what this medical building code. It's called OSHPOD 3. And so, you found some medical office space that has worked perfectly fine, maybe would work perfectly fine for a private OBGYN clinic that, makes money. Yeah. No. Not good enough. Your hallway can't be 4.5 feet wide. It has to be 5 feet wide. Your HVAC system circulates the air X number of times per hour. No. It has to be 3X times per hour. Like the most absurd, these like hospital grade requirements.
Gotcha.
That only for some reason for nonprofit clinics. I'm just ranting. I could rant and rave about how California just makes
you
starting businesses.
And we got it started by the grace of God, right? I'm sure the whole process you're also recognizing God, I need you in this.
Oh yeah.
This isn't, like you put this in me. And so I need to, I'm going to try and finish it, but you need to open the door.
Yeah. I kept saying like, I just need to get this baby walking.
Yeah.
I just need to get this baby walking. And I'm now finally at a point where the baby's walking.
Yeah.
I don't have to be the CEO anymore. And now I just try to.
What's awesome about what you're saying too, though, is that you recognize your commitment to Right to Life of Central California. And it takes an awesome personality, a good relationship with God, to also realize I can't be duplicitous at some level, right? Like doing both the CEO for Obria and doing this. Like I have to relinquish this to make sure that I'm honoring what I've committed to.
Yeah, and there is a little bit of pride in that gets hurt in like acknowledging, I cannot do both of these things, but it's also it was also a little bit of like I'm completely miserable. I would like to not be running two things at the same time, and kind of.
And your wife would like to see you. Yeah, once in a while.
I'd rather not half-ass two things. Could I just whole-ass one thing? Like that would be really nice. So that's awesome. I heard that phrase. Well, yeah. That's probably fine for a Catholic dad's podcast. All right. So that's my advice, to all of you out there. Don't half-ass two things. Whole ass one thing.
Title of the episode right there.
Whole ass one thing.
All right. What is that's a good segue into this. I love this question. What is your greatest struggle with being Catholic?
Greatest struggle with
and don't be cliche with sin.
Sin. Hey, being a crappy one. It's probably like... honestly, running a business ethically and like the ethical thing of like, okay, I if I don't get this done correctly, am I putting something in jeopardy? If I don't get this done correctly, the hard work of HR, like, am I bilking this employee? If I don't do this correctly, am I, violating a labor law thing that could, put us in jeopardy down the road? If I'm not conscientious about working on this, am I going to be too late getting our renewal for this insurance and put something? And I don't know if that's that stuff, like, if you take on a lot of responsibility, you got a lot of responsibility, and you can't kind of, as I said, you can't half-ass it. Like there's too many people who depend on you for you to kind of do that, and it that's the stuff that worries, that eats at my conscience if I'm like not working as hard on something and something's going to fall through. And I don't know, I've been prone to being overly scrupulous at times, so sometimes there's a bit of like, is this actually that important, or am I just freaking out about this? But yeah, that stuff's hard. That stuff's hard. Maintaining a consistent prayer life when you have a busy schedule and little kids, that's hard. It's why I really like my Ordinariate prayer book, is because it's very like blah. Yeah. It's also, Eli and I were talking about this a little bit, or Eli was talking about, what was the book you were the spirit? What was the book you were talking with me before right when I got here, that you were looking at some work of spirituality? I was joking about Benedictine spirituality with you.
Oh, yeah. Divine Simplicity.
Yeah, Divine Simplicity. Yeah. Which, and I think a lot of post like 1500s on, maybe it's sort of Counter-Reformation onward Catholic spirituality. A lot of it is very like subjective focused, almost like a lot of Jesuit spirituality. Very like a lot of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, like put yourself in, like your meditations, put yourself at the foot of the cross. What do you think? What are you? How are you? Put yourself as one of the characters. Like it. Here I am criticizing St. Ignatius. He's a giant, and I'm
I wasn't going to say it, John.
He's a giant, and he's going to be in 80 spots up in heaven, and I'm Joe Shit, the Ragman. But
he didn't start a clinic.
But yeah, but I think the Jesuits started a few clinics. So a few hospitals and orphanages and converted a couple of continents. I will say there are real differences between, say, the Jesuit approach to spirituality and, say, the Benedictine approach to spirituality, where the Benedictine approach is read more of the Bible, or read these Psalms a bit and maybe think about them a little.
Yeah.
And I feel like as I've been praying the office more and more and more, and I got interested in the office because I was interested in Latin, and then finding my ordinariate office has actually let me get a little bit more into the Psalms, because that's one of the cool things with the ordinariate office is that, like, in the modern liturgy of the hours, you're often not reading an entire psalm at once in its context. You're getting like a section of a psalm, and it's a certain length, and it's designed to be organized so that it kind of fits into lots.
Yeah.
Whereas with the ordinariate office, it's like some days you might pray 3 psalms if they're kind of shorter, and one day you might just pray 1 psalm if it's really long, but you're reading the whole thing top to bottom. And it's allowed me to kind of I recognize I have my favorite psalms.
Yeah.
I've got I really love Psalm 22, and everyone kind of knows Psalm 23. But you start identifying psalms and maybe not quite memorizing them, but getting to know them much better. Like I love the 120s.
Yeah.
Which are the so-called gradual psalms. I don't know why they're called. Because I guess they're kind of short and self-contained, so it's like you go step by step by step. After Psalm 119, which is like 8 miles long.
There is, in true Catholic form, there is an explanation for why they're called the gradual psalms.
Well, it's a gradus.
We just don't know what that is.
Well, I think it's because gradual it's from gradus, which means step. So it's like you go step by step by step by step.
Building.
Yeah, 120, 121, 120. Yeah. So I've gotten to really love those. So, and I think there's something kind of about these older, almost Benedictine ideas of spirituality that are almost kinder to laymen, where it's like, you don't need to try to have some kind of profound spiritual subjective insight, because it's not ultimately about you.
Yes.
It's about the Opus Dei. It's the work of God, which they created the word Opus Dei before Opus Dei did Opus Dei. It's about, why don't you just read this dang Bible?
Yeah.
Why don't you shut up and stop thinking you're important and grow by reading this dang thing?
This is what's fascinating, though, to your point about reading the Bible, right? Like you mentioned it. Psalm 23, we all have a really good idea of what it's about.
Yeah.
Right? We've heard it a number of times, if not many times.
Yeah.
But there's this line that I tripped over last week in it. And it keeps haunting me, like in prayer, right? Mm-hmm. It keeps, you have prepared a table before me in front of my enemies.
Yeah.
What the heck does that mean?
Like,
right? Like,
I'm sitting there in the presence of my enemies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm obviously thinking about this in the context of Mass, right? Like, you've prepared this table before me. So who are my enemies right now?
Outside of the church, everyone's like, it's the devil. Yeah, it's probably the devil,
and that's where you can go to the logical side of it. But then, like, there's also the spiritual element of that of going, well, what did you mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like, David, what did you mean when you were writing this? What was going on in this instance? Where
he's probably getting chased around by somebody.
Yeah.
Which kind of happens. Kind of happens a lot for poor old David. Well, poor David. Kind of had it coming sometimes. Anyway, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, I emailed this to Father Michael, our pastor, Father Michael Andrade, who I email him things, and I know he's very busy and doesn't always have time to respond, so it's okay. St. Robert Bellarmine, not St. Charles Borromeo, St. Robert Bellarmine, wrote this extensive commentary on the Psalms. Like, really extensive.
Okay.
Like, every verse, he's got, like,
breaks it
a
down.
lot to say.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I think that is a fruit of prior to Vatican II, and I'm not saying every priest prior to Vatican II was a good priest, but the office, as it was prayed by monks and priests, involved saying all 150 psalms each week. The modern Liturgy of the Hours, you get almost all 150 psalms over the course of 4 weeks.
Right.
And there are certain psalms that they kind of edited out because they were a little mean in certain verses, which is another advantage of the ordinariate office. Nothing is edited out. All 150.
It's all there.
Yeah. So by the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept, and we don't leave out the throwing. Anyway, dashing little ones, dashing the little ones in Babylon. But these guys prayed the Psalms so flippin' much that I think they had every word of all 150 Psalms memorized. Yeah, genuinely memorized. And people have said that about St. Thomas, that he had like the whole Bible memorized.
Yes.
Which is interesting to think of when I think of like, how many Beatles lyrics do I have memorized?
Oh my gosh.
And like, how many more useful things could probably be in my brain instead of all these crappy Beatles songs?
Yes.
Anyway, the Beatles are fine.
But to your point, like
but it was like a lifetime of reflection.
Yes.
Like every week, constantly thinking and praying and thinking and praying, and so thankfully, it's really awesome to have that from St. Robert Bellarmine. But I think he was far from the only one to produce stuff like that. I'm pretty sure there were tons of Benedictine monks who were producing stuff like that. Yeah. So I think,
and most of it unknown, right? Like most of it, the stuff's found, and it's like, oh, that's beautiful. Let's just put that up here with all these other scrolls.
Or just well, isn't that the Carthusians or someone like that, or the Cistercians or Carthusians? I can't remember. Who like if they ever write something, it's by a Carthusian monk. They don't actually sign their name because God forbid you get acknowledged for it. So, Anyways, there you go. That's what's hard about being Catholic.
All right.
There you go.
So you'll like this one. You're an Office fan, right?
Sure. I've had a complicated Office. I used to really like it, and then I was like a contrarian college student. Oh, everyone likes The Office. It's lame. And then I became like
you went punk rock.
Then I became an old man, and I'm watching reruns with Holly, and I'm like, you know what? It's really flipping funny until the season Michael Scott left, and then
it goes downhill from there.
As soon as Robert California.
All right, so you remember when Michael? You remember when Michael comes in? Anytime he basically just sees Toby.
Yeah,
and he just goes,
hates
oh, God. He goes from like happy-go-lucky, like worst boss ever to you.
Which is how probably most people should react when they see their HR manager. Anyway.
Why are you the way that you are?
Why are you the way that you are?
That's why I have to frame it, because you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Why are you the way that you are? Why is I the way I is? I don't know. I don't know how I got to be like Mr. Radio. I didn't talk that much as a kid, and it was my older brother actually who still talks constantly.
More than you?
If he and I are in the same room, he's talking more than me. I guarantee.
I do love you, John.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Mike. So my brother Mike is a fancy schmancy lawyer in D.C. He works for the Department of Justice. We joke. So he's a career attorney in the Department of Justice, and he was hired. So he was hired during the Trump administration, but he's still on during the Biden administration.
Okay.
So when he got hired, I joked that he was, Donald Trump hired him to drain the swamp. So that's not what it is. What?
All defensive.
It's like, that's not what it is. Even though he's like a very conservative, it's funny. I guess the Department of Justice basically takes the mindset that their litigation attorneys, like even the career ones, like they have to kind of have a stable of kind of conservative leaning lawyers and kind of liberal leaning lawyers because like if a Republican president gets elected, they need lawyers to defend what the administration's doing. And if a Democrat's elected, yeah. So I'd ask him, well, are you okay? After Biden got elected, I'm like, are you going to be okay if, like, you know, are they going to ask you, like, to defend, like, some horrible abortion, like, regulations or something? He's like, nah, they're not going to make me do that. Yeah. They'll make me do some, you know, something boring. But, yeah. So why is I the way I is?
You started out with radio, so I didn't mean to derail you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, intellectual stuff was that was a lot of Notre Dame. Notre Dame was very formative for what I think about stuff and developing my faith, and getting introduced to St. Thomas was really important, and getting a better philosophical grounding for why I'm a believer. That was really important. And meeting Holly, that was important. Yes, meeting my wife was an important life moment. Yes, Holly and I have laughed about this. That, like, I don't know if we're just particularly lucky in our marriage or what, but, like, I know and I'm sure probably any couple that's been married long enough experiences this, where I know exactly how Holly's going to react to something. Like a news, usually like a news story or an opinion thing, or someone doing something embarrassing or stupid. And I'm like, I know Holly's going to think that this is dumb, and I don't even have to ask her about it. And then I share it with her. She's like, yeah, that's the stupidest thing ever. And I'm like, I knew you would say that. I was like, God, I love you so much. And I think we've realized, are we just, like, incredibly similar? Like, are we just, like, perfect for it? Like, we still say, like, we've been married 10 years. Like, are we just, like, perfect? And I think we've realized, like, well, we met when, like, she was like 18 and I was 19 when we met, and now we've been hanging out with each other for, like, freaking, how old are we?
Isn't it awesome?
I guess it's like,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't
I guess
matter.
I've been hanging out with her for like 17 years.
Yeah.
Holy shit. We've been hanging out with each other for so long that I think we kind of just grew up together at this point. And so we've sort of formed our personalities sort of around each other, more or less. So I think I think she actually has exerted a major influence just on my, you know, behavior and attitudes and thoughts about things. And I'm definitely less dumb about certain things. Like I think I'm less of a rad trad now than I was then, largely because of her being like, you know, chill out, Sparky.
Calm down,
Sparky. Yeah,
calm down, Sparky.
Yeah. If 18-year-old me would sue, I don't actually go to the Latin Mass very much. What the fuck is that here? Are you some kind of a modern? Yeah. So
I love your 18-year-old voice, by the way,
dude.
This is like the third or fourth example where it's been the same one.
I do not. 18-year-old John Gerardi was... Oh, my gosh. I remember one time, and I didn't realize how dumb it was. I had a classics professor, and she was like a very good professor. She was like a scholar of Greek. And for some reason, I kept assuming that this author was a man, when it wasn't. It was a woman. And it was like some author who went by just their initials, so their first two initials. She said, "Why do you?" And I'm in a class with a female class professor. She's like, "Why do you?" John, that's a woman. It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just always assume that classics professors are that classics authors are men." And she's like, are you? She could not believe. She was also the most attractive teacher I have ever had in my life. She could not believe how stupid I was. That I would be so dumb as to say this.
Out loud. Maybe in your head.
Oh, yeah.
But you actually said it. Not just in front of her, but probably other students, too.
In front of all these other students who were like looking at me like they could not fathom how stupid I was. Yeah. Like, I was in the honors program. like, what are you doing? Yeah. So I don't know. I think some combination of Holly being Catholic,
She's like, John, a woman wrote that. You're like, you're beautiful and funny.
A woman writing. What next? What are they going to do next? Vote? Good God.
God forbid.
That was a line in 30 Rock where Dr. Spaceman was like, when is modern science going to come up with a cure for a woman's mouth? I do not endorse such a view. I do not endorse such a view. Just making jokes. Woman with a small brain a third the size of ours. It's science. All right, Ron Burgundy. There we go.
All right. I think we've already passed another hour.
Ron Burgundy has a lot to do with who I am.
Let's take another break.
Okay. We'll wrap up. All right. Let's wrap up this lightning round. Here we go.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Hello, friends. I want to tell you a little bit about our First Fruits movement. What we do first in everything matters. It sets the trajectory of whatever action we take. In Leviticus, God tells Moses to share with the Israelites that they must bring forth the first fruits of their livestock, of their produce, and of their drink. The fulfillment of this is found in Jesus himself. He is the firstborn of the Father. He is the first man to conquer death. He is the first to ascend into heaven. Before Jesus' ministry, he would run to Mary for guidance and counsel. So why would I not do the same? What can you do to participate? Commit to praying the rosary daily, invite other men and women to join you, and share the movement with your friends on social media and other communication platforms. What can you do to support us here at Circa Ignem and First Fruits? First, pray for us and our mission daily, and second, buy our hats and future merch at circaignem.com. That's CIRCAIGNEM.com. Thank you.
All righty.
All right.
So we're going too long, and we're two-parting this, baby. John Gerardi here on the John Gerardi Show on Power Talk 96.7 AM 1400. We're joined by our guests, Rick and Eli. Boys.
Wow, the table really
tables. You should have known that this would happen. If John Gerardi is given a microphone, he's going to act like he's in charge. All right.
I can't believe I got an invite on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm a guest.
All right, I'll turn it back over. All right.
I'm actually going to flip it back over to you.
All right, land the airplane.
Let's.
He doesn't know how to fly.
So we've got like a glimpse of who you are. Let's do just kind of your closing thoughts. Where people can find you.
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll end in prayer.
Well, if you want more of a John Gerardi audio experience in your life, have I got enough hours of content for you?
In a more formal setting.
In a more formal setting that's governed by, 14-minute segment, 6-minute segment, not this podcast stuff. There's no discipline. If you want to find the John Gerardi Show, go to Apple Podcasts or the iHeart app, and you can search for The John Gerardi Show, or you can search for Right to Life Radio. Those are my two shows. Right to Life Radio is every Saturday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Power Talk 96.7 AM 1400 in the South Valley. And The John Gerardi Show is Monday through Friday from 6 to 7 p.m., again, on Power Talk 96.7 AM 1400, and on the Power Talk station in Modesto, whose place on the dial I do not remember because I do not live in Modesto. So, anyway, there you go. The John Gerardi Show. Just search me on Google, Gerardi. It's a hard name to spell. So, hopefully you'll get somewhere in the ballpark and you'll find me. So, yeah. And you can find out more about Right to Life Essential California, my day job. Go to rtlcc.org. There's a big red donate button on the top right that I will point out to people. And, yeah, right.
Donate.
No one knows. Yes, there's a billionaire. Oh, yes, I'm going to listen to the Circa Ignem podcast. Jeff Bezos is like, well, they use some Amazon server, so I'm going to listen to this podcast. Also, you can go to obriafresno.org, OBRIA Fresno.org. That's sort of the patient website. Or you can go to obria365.org. That's our donor page, which I would encourage you to go to. Unless you actually need medical care, in which case go to obriafresno.org. But if you don't need medical care and just want to get rid of your money, obria365.org. So there you go. So yeah, I think that's all my... Is that all my stuff? I think that's all my stuff.
Yeah.
Drop the Twitter handle.
Oh yeah, at Fresno Johnny, at Fresno Johnny on Twitter for all of my 200 whatever character rantings and ravings. I've not given in to buying Twitter Premium or whatever Elon's. Yeah. I'm staying strong. I like the discipline of Twitter. Like, keep your thoughts to whatever many characters. Be concise, baby. Yeah. It forces brevity. So, unless you're one of those people who writes like 80 tweet long threads, in which case, blogs still exist. That's a thing. So yeah. Now, Twitter is kind of my that's my vice. It's my show prep is really what it is. Yeah. So every morning I get to the radio station, pull up Twitter, pull up FresnoB.com, sort through. So yeah, that's all my short form
use that
rantings
as your kickoff point for
That's my kickoff point. So yeah, so that's all my short term rantings and ravings. So yeah, Twitter.com/Fresno Johnny at Fresno Johnny on Twitter. I got Fresno Johnny. Johnny Fresno taken. Fresno Johnny was available. So.
I didn't know people still read the Fresno Bee. It's news.
Yeah,
McClatchy subsidized.
It's still, so my producer constantly gives me crap about this. He's like, nobody reads the Fresno Bee. I'm like, I gotta find news somewhere. Someone's got to do local news somehow. Yeah. So I'm like the one guy still reading the Fresno Bee. I might
keeping them afloat.
the one.
Yeah. Well, I've given them a bunch of op-eds that I've written over the last as Mr. Wright's life. So
again for free.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. My mom and dad said to me, Johnny, nobody does more work for free than you do. You are an idiot. Or no, they didn't say I'm an idiot, but I could feel it.
It was in between the words.
I was working on something with Bishop Brennan. Like, is he going to pay you for that? Like,
probably not.
Almost certainly not.
My treasures are stored in heaven.
My treasure, yeah, exactly. Well, at least, hopefully in the nicer wings of purgatory, anyway.
Hey, aim high. Aim high.
Hey, purgatory's a mountain. Dante said so.
It's got to be.
You're just getting higher and higher. I'd like to think that heaven, hell, and purgatory are exactly the way Dante described them. I'd like to think that that's my pious thing that I hold on to. Yeah. That purgatory is actually a mountain on the other side of the globe, and that you get up, you climb higher and higher, and at the very tippy top of it is the Garden of Eden, and then boop, you get up to heaven. There you go. And then you can only move in the daytime. That's. I could talk about 20 minutes about purgatory. Purgatorio is the best one. Don't just read the Inferno. If you read the Inferno, you're missing out. Don't just read the Inferno because people burning in hell. Oh, that's fun. That means that there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, that's a reflection of you.
Yeah. Read the Purgatorio. It's really interesting, and then read Paradiso. It's hard, but it's probably too hard for me to understand right now. But anyway, so. There we go. So that's John Gerardi. There you go. All right. So we'll be back for part 2. Is that the plan?
That's the plan.
All right.
We appreciate it, John. Let's wrap up in prayer.
Sounds good.
In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Lord, we just thank you for this time. We thank you for John's gift, his gift of words, his gift of gab. We just, I'm really excited for just finding out more about his life, how you've worked in his life, and getting to know him. That's really why we started this, is to go into long format of getting to know each other in our community, both at OLPH and Fresno at large. So we just offer this up through the intercession of Mary. Right. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Saint Joseph, terror of demons,
pray for us.
There we go. The most fun Saint Joseph appellation.